Salut, bonjour. French vocabulary has a hidden structure. That's what I'm going to talk to you about in this short 10-minute tuto. And previously, we asked ourselves a simple question, didn't we? In fact, this is a relevant question for us all, which is why does French vocabulary feel overwhelming? And I guess it would be the same story if we were learning another language as well. And where we got to was we were thinking, well, if we had a mosaic on the floor, like a Roman mosaic, and they would have had all these tens of thousands of little tiles, then it would be really hard for us to actually remember every single tile in that, and you'd lose count, wouldn't you? Even before you lost memory of each individual one and what it was for and when we needed to use it. But the good news is that French vocabulary does have a hidden structure. And when I talk about hidden structure, I'm not talking about categories of situations, you know, everyday situations where you might have organized your vocabulary before. So, hidden structure is not saying that I use vocabulary when I go to a cafe, or different vocabulary when I go shopping, or another one when I go to the cinema, and another one that I use when I want to buy some clothes or something. Because, yes, of course, all of those situations do attract some individual relevant vocabulary, but that's not structure, that's just about where you're going to apply it. And there are all sorts of reasons why that doesn't actually work, because it's not how we think in life, and it's not really how you think about your own language. And memory isn't the problem either, because just think of all the things you can remember. You can remember so many thousands and thousands of people's names. You can remember moments that span across decades, probably. You can remember lyrics of words. You can remember dates, all sorts of things that you know that you can remember. And yet, when you come back to look at that vocabulary that you've so carefully written down and noted and organized by all sorts of different ways. I mean, you might have organised it by context. You might have said all about verbs. You might have said, by grammatical reasoning. You might have organised it by pronunciation reasoning. All these different ways that you might have organised your vocabulary. And yet, when you come to speak, suddenly you just can't remember it. Well, you can't remember what its relationship is, or the form that it should be said in, or something. And it's just not coming out, so, in that sort of like natural, sort of like subconscious sort of way that we're communicating in our own native language. But the good news is that there is some hidden structure, and once you start to feel that hidden structure and you start to see how words behave inside that hidden structure, that kind of gives you a bunch of sort of like safe bases that you can go to and reuse and reuse and become fluent. So you don't believe me, and that's all right, because why would you? Your experiences so far have been, well, yes, Ellie, but I've never heard of this structure before, and every single book that I've ever seen organizes, doesn't it, by grammar or by context, and why would this work? And I think the only way for you to find out whether or not this works for you is, and whether that hidden structure exists, is for you to discover it step by step. So I can't sit here and just give you a floor plan and say, there's the hidden structure. It's around about 907 words that play in this hidden structure. And, off you go and apply it to in the way that you've already been learning French, because that's not going to work. So it's a different way of thinking. It's a bit transformative in the way that you start to speak French, and it doesn't rely on translation. So you're going to need some help with this. And that's where I come in to help you, because I can show you the structure and reveal it to you and help you really reveal it to yourself step by step over time. But here's some of the things that we know that make that structure hold so firm. And it's not all words carry the same weight. Some words appear everywhere, and they are haute fréquence, and others appear rarely. And it will depend on you what those words are, because there are some, main. I'm doing this because this sort of like where hold the whole language together. There are some words that really do have a fundamental role in holding the whole language together. But if you work in a kitchen, if you say you're a chef, and you're using, or you're a ballet teacher, or or I don't know, or a solicitor, you might find that certain words are really, really important for you to use, and not rare at all because they come up in your world over and over again. And I may never come across them because I'm not in that world. So there's an element of that that's going on as well, apart from obviously the main structure that's there for all of us to use, really. And the French linguist Jacqueline Picoche, who is my point of reference for everything that I'm doing with 907, because she was the person who's 50 years of studying vocabulary discovered these 907 words. Her research showed that there is a structure, a hidden structure in French, which is organised around frequency. And that, if we took the sort of like the analogy of a building, that could look like, some of these words are like pillars, and, pillars going to hold things up. And then the last thing we see when a building falls down is always the pillars that stay standing, isn't it? And others are supporting walls, and others are perhaps ornaments on those walls or pictures on the walls. Now, if you asked me if I was building a house, I probably would want to step straight to the interior design and start to think about, what the living room looked like and the colours and what walls I might put on there, what I might put on the walls and those sorts of things. And obviously we want to picture the end result, and I would definitely encourage that because it's very motivating. But in terms of this sort of like step by step structural build that, and you'll hear me talk about building quite a lot actually at the French Room, then really we need to start from building the pillars. Well, it's a good idea to start from there because the pillars are the ones that are going to hold up more of the language, and they will probably carry the most weight. And then you've got the supporting walls, and then you go on to the pictures and the ornaments on the wall. So we're probably going to think in those terms rather than going straight to, the sort of like the tiny detail that's sort of like on a wall that, is a word that perhaps is really interesting, but isn't going to carry much weight if we think about hidden structure. And haute fréquence is an idea that I'll keep on sharing with you, and it's where words appear really frequently. And the thing is once you train yourself to notice them, you'll see them everywhere. And that's if you focus on one word at a time and you step through sort of line oh 07 in the way that I'm suggesting for you. And it's this thing that we've all got, this filter, haven't we? So if you bought a new car recently, or whenever you last bought a new car, or anything, but let's stick with the car. You might think, oh, my car's really rare. I've never seen many of these. I haven't seen many of these around. And of course, you start driving on the highway or, through your local town. And what do you see? You see loads of the same model. And oh my God, there are so many of them which are the same colour. And they've even got that extra feature of like the sunroof that I thought was so unusual that I've got on mine. And what's at play there is this amazing thing that we have already built in that we don't have to think about, which is this filter that our brains will switch on to what it thinks is most important and filter out all the rest. So once you start focusing on a word that's important to you, then you're going to start seeing that all over the place. And that's really, really useful actually, because it means that you start to actually understand where that word gets reused and reused, and you'll start to see what its role is automatically, really. And that gradually, one by one, these words will become bankable 907 words. And I know I'm introducing lots of new terms and things, but these terms will start to mean something for you. And when I say bankable, I mean you're going to decide whether there's something that you want to bank and keep for yourself or not. I'll come back to that idea over the next couple of tutos. Now you might remember or may not, and that's okay, rendement. Rendement was Picoche's another central idea of what Picoche was telling us, which is what does a word give us back? So it might be high frequency, it might all be all over the place, but what's it give back? And actually what that means is how many different meanings does that word have? Because actually some words do an extraordinary amount of work. And if I take the verb prendre, for example, then, prendre has been around since the vestiges of our time, ever since, whenever the French language started to form. And it's going to have a very different footprint to a newer verb, like an ER verb like googler, for example. So prendre, with age, it's stood the test of time. It's gone across all of these centuries with the French language. And over time, it's adapted and moved along with the language, and it hasn't actually changed in terms of the way that it's formed and things. But what it's done is it's gathered meaning as it's gone. And the reason why it's still relevant and it's still essential, actually, what I call a pillar of the French language now, is because over time it's gathered lots and lots of meaning, and it happens to be really high frequency. But it also gives an awful lot back in terms of, where all the different places you can use it. And this isn't surprising because we know that there's this huge difference, don't we, between the English dictionary and the French dictionary. So if you're coming to French from English, then the English dictionary is about 10 times bigger than the French dictionary. So every word in the French dictionary has got to have multiple uses. And that's rendement. So what does all of this mean for you learning French? Well, the great news is that there is a hidden structure, and it's not so hidden that you can't find it without you can't find it, and you can find it, obviously without me, but I can help you find it. But I can't give you a blueprint to take you straight there. But if you learn long lists of separate words, then it might look good on paper, but it's not going to give you that hidden structure, is it? So this is a different way of thinking about vocabulary, and it's really looking at can I discover that hidden structure. So I'm going to leave you with a couple of questions here. These are 907 questions, and when I say 907, this is referring to the approximate number of words that we need to understand that hidden structure behind the French language in a way that actually we can recall and reuse when we're speaking, which is what we're most interested in. So two 907 questions for you would be, how can I reuse this word? That's what you're going to ask yourselves over and over again. And should I bank it? And we'll come on to that banking idea. And I think you're going to like it. Merci beaucoup. À bientôt. Au revoir.